Thanks for tuning in for part 2 of our lesson.
All right, we're going to continue on with the lesson. We're going to go now to the book of Jubilees, chapter 7, verses 21 through 24.
Say that again, sir.
The book of Jubilees, chapter 7, verses 21 through 24. Book of Jubilees, chapter 7, verses 21 through 24.
The book of Jubilees, chapter 7, verse 21. For owing to these three things came the flood upon the earth, namely, owing to the fornication wherein the watchers against the law of their ordinances went a whoring after the daughters of men, and took themselves wives of all which they chose, and they made the beginning of uncleanness. And they begat sons of the Nephilim.
This would be the Nephilim, okay? This would be the Nephilim. So there are three major reasons for why God had to destroy the earth with a flood. The number one being that these angels came down and created these hybrid creatures from angelic beings and human beings. Created these Nephilim. Read.
And they were all unlike, and they devoured one another. And the giant slew the Nephil, and the Nephil slew the Iljo, and the Iljo mankind, and one man another.
So it's interesting here in Jubilee 7, it says all these classifications of these hybrid creatures were unalike. It's similar to what we read in Enoch chapter 7, verse 2, the proper version, the Greek version, which says that unto them were born the great giants, and unto them were born the Nephilim, and then the Eliud. These are the classifications of giants that sprouted. This is a lineage of giants and races that came out from that original offspring. And it's describing it here in Jubilee 7. Keep going.
And everyone sold himself to work iniquity, and to shed much blood, and the earth was filled with iniquity. And after this, they sinned against the beasts and birds.
They sinned against them? What would that mean? Perhaps bestiality.
Yeah, eat. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Because if it was just to eat them, what would that mean? You just ate them. You know what I'm saying? If these are some creatures and they're eating animals, they just say they're eating them, consuming them, devouring, destroying them.
How you doing something with a bird though?
I don't know. But that's why he had to destroy it. And I'm not saying necessarily it had to be bestiality, but it's weird that it says he sinned against them. You like sin to offend it. You offended the birds? Then how are you doing that? By perverting it somehow? What are you doing? What are you doing with that bird, man? What you doing with that cat, man? What are you doing? You doing something freaky diggy over there with that cat, you nasty giant? Keep going. From the top.
I'm still trying to figure out what is that.
Let's read from the top.
Okay, verse 24. And after this, they sinned against the beasts and the birds and all that moved and walks on the earth.
What? They either were sexual with it or did something.
Could have been eating the birds, having sex with the beast and the men and stuff.
Yeah, just being perverse.
Yeah.
Being perverse. Not what God created at all. You going?
And much blood was shed on the earth, and every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually.
And this is echoed in the book of Genesis, chapter 6. From there, we're going to go to Enoch, chapter 19, verses 1 and 2. I have a lot of scripture. I'm trying to move through it as quickly as possible.
You said chapter 19, what?
Enoch, chapter 19, verses 1 and 2.
Then, book of Enoch, chapter 19, verse 1. Then Uriel said, Hear the angels who cohabited with women, appointed their leaders, and being numerous in appearance, made men profane, and caused them to err, so that they sacrifice to devils as to gods. For in the great day there shall be a judgment. Which, Salakia, just the punctuation be throwing me off sometimes. For in the great day there shall be a judgment, with which they shall be judged, until they are consumed. And their wives also shall be judged, who led astray the angels of heaven, that they might salute them.
Okay. So verse 2 is interesting because it says that for the creation that came from them, man began to sacrifice to devils as to gods. Right? What does that make me think of? What we kind of talked about last time. Let me see if I can pull up here. Bear with me. Like when we look at the Egyptian pantheon. When we look at the Egyptian pantheon, you see all of these different gods that resemble, let's go here, all of these different gods that are part man and part beast. And they're worshipped as gods. And it's not just in Egyptian culture, it's all the world over. All of the different cultures of the world have a legend, folklore, and a religion that's tied to them worshiping a god that's in the image of a man or woman, but part animal as well. Mm-hmm. Either having the lower body of the animal or the upper body of an animal or the head of an animal. Okay? These were devils sacrificed to as though they were gods and divine. The people, when they saw that Zepho killed that creature in the cave, they made him a hero. Because they probably thought, you killed a god. He's a god slayer. He slayed the god, this evil god. He slayed him. So they made him a hero. Okay, so this is something that just to meditate on. Okay, from there we're going to go to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 10. The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 10.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 10. For this cause ought the women to have power on her head because of the angels.
Okay. Let's see here. Bear with me. Read it one more time, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Verse 10. For this cause ought the women to have power on her head because of the angels.
Okay. So that's in the New Testament. Many, when they read that, they, like I said, there are some Christian schools of thought that believe that, their angels didn't fall. That's not biblical. And this text right here is talking about, just the angel of the churches, meaning the pastors, or I forget what sort of interpretation they give. But I want to go back over what we read in Enoch 19 in verse 2. Towards the end of the verse it says, until they be consumed, till they be consumed, and their wives, meaning the angels, and the wives also shall be judged, who led astray the angels of heaven. So the women weren't innocent. They are guilty. They helped lead astray the angels of heaven that they might salute them. Meaning so that these angels might approach to have intercourse with them. These women enticed and led them astray. They tempted these angels. Okay? Now, when you go into Corinthians, it talks about that the woman should have a covering. Read it one more time, please.
Mm-hmm. Verse 10. For this cause ought the women to have power on her head because of the angels. Meaning
headship, a covering. Why? Because of those angels. Though, you think about it in terms of, like, Madame Blavatsky, I think her name is, who was visited by angels. There are many other women throughout the ages that were visited by angels and always began to push this false doctrine because they felt they received this angelic encounter. Even when you think about Eve, you know what I'm saying? The fact that she was approached first before Adam, and she caused him to sin because she got an understanding that he didn't have. And she's like, no, Adam, you don't know. Let me give you the breakdown. Let me give you the understanding, Adam. Okay, yeah. Tell me all about it. Yeah, if you eat this, you're gonna be wise. Because you ain't got the wisdom yet. I got the wisdom. But if you eat this, you'll have wisdom like me. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to read this commentary. So this is Chuck Smith. He is a Christian theologian. This is what his commentary is on that verse you just read. It reads, now I wish he hadn't have said that, referring to Paul. This is his opinion on that verse, where it says the woman should have a power over her head because of the angels, so that she's not vulnerable to the angels. This is what this theologian has to say. Now, I wish he hadn't have said that, because I was able to follow him pretty well up to this point. But what he meant by because of the angels is something that theologians have discussed through the years. One suggestion now, we know that when we gather together, the angels of the Lord gather with us. And it has been suggested that the angels being creatures of rank and order, respect the order of God, and they like to see the orders and rankings of God followed. The second suggestion is that there are also evil angels present, and a woman without a veil is attractive to them. I sort of reject the second idea, because nowhere in the New Testament where angels are mentioned is this sense are they fallen angels. I would prefer the former, but I am not satisfied with it. I don't really know what he is referring to tell you the truth. So this Christian theologian don't really even know what he's talking about. So he's saying the fallen angels idea, yeah, that's garbage. I don't believe that. But I really don't believe the first idea. To be honest with you, I really don't know what he's talking about. And you know what? I can respect that. That's fair. To really admit, I really don't know what Paul is referring to. And I'm not going to act like I know all the answers. But when we see all of this other evidence, it's like, well, because of the angels, she should have a power over her head because of the angels? Could it be we're talking about the godly angels in the order? Perhaps. But it's just something to think about. Something to meditate on. Okay? From there, now I'm going to bring up some passages. Let's see. From the book of Josephus. Okay? Antiquities of Josephus, book 5, chapter 2, section 3. If you don't mind, can you turn that light on, please? It reads, wow, I didn't do much of that. For which reason they removed their camp to Hebron. So this is Josephus giving a little history, I guess, as to things that transpired, like Numbers 13 that we started off with, talking about how the ancient Israelites entered into the land of Canaan and saw all these giants. He's kind of going into that. For which reason they removed their camp to Hebron, and when they had taken it, they slew all the inhabitants. There were till then left the race of giants, who had bodies so large and countenances so entirely different from other men, meaning their face looked different. Their face and their appearance looked different than other men, that they were surprising to the sight and terrible to the hearing. Many say that even those Zanzims that were mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 2, that they were referred to as a people that made loud noises. They were giants that often made loud noises. Right? The bones of these men are still shown to this very day. This is Josephus talking about. What did we read to open this lesson up with? The Smithsonian and all these giant bones that they stole. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now this was written hundreds of years ago. The Antiquities of Josephus, and he's even referring to the bones of the giants. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day, unlike to many credible relations of other men. Now they gave this city to the Levites as an extraordinary reward with the suburbs of 2,000 cities, but the land thereto belonging they gave as a free gift to Caleb according to the injunctions of Moses. This Caleb was one of the spies which Moses sent into the land of Canaan. They also gave land for habitation for the posterity of Jethro the Midianite, who was the father-in-law to Moses, for they had left their own country and followed him and accompanied them in the wilderness. So it's talking about these great giants and how they were terrible to look upon, their noise, and that their bones were still relevant and still around. Okay, something definitely to think about. Let's see. Let's grab some more evidence. Extra biblical sources. The Book of the Giants. So this is another extra biblical source that was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran caves, and these are fragments. But this is what it has to say, and you could take it for what it is and say, "Oh, I don't believe that." But these are ancient texts. They were found in among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the cave of Qumran, that date back to, I believe, either the 1st century AD or 100 BC, before Christ. These are ancient documents. And this is what is written in them in this fragment. So it's botched up because there are fragments left. And so in this fragment, in the Book of the Giants, this is what it has to say about the giants. They defiled, they begot giants and monsters. They begot, and behold, all the earth was corrupted with its blood, and by the hand of giants which did not satisfy them, and they were seeking to devour many. the monsters attacked it. That's pretty weird. That it's talking about giants and monsters. And what do we see as a parallel between Genesis, Enoch, and Jubilees? That it talks about that the earth was corrupted by the activity of these giants. They injured birds and beasts. You know what I'm saying? We're seeing these parallels through Genesis, Enoch, Jubilees, and even here in the book of the Giants. Okay? We're going to find some more sources. Let us go.
The Book of the Giants, huh?
Yeah, I have it somewhere. I thought I'd be able to find it, but I couldn't. All right, the creatures of Tabel. All right, I'm going to read this and try to get through it quickly. The Creatures of Tabel, The Legends of the Jews by Louis Ginsberg, which, let me show that real quick. Bear with me. Just show the image. So, this is a book that is a part that takes some of the oral tradition and other stories and folklore, Jewish folklore, combines it together. Now, I'm not saying everything in there is true. I'm not even saying that any of it is true. But it's something that does go back to the oral tradition. So this goes back a long time. Before the Jewish converts, this stuff existed. So it's like, where did it come from? You know what I'm saying? Josephus even talked about the giants. Where did this stuff come from? Because Yasher is talking about these strange creatures. So how do we piece this stuff together? So there is something that maybe we can draw from and extract from this stuff to just at least wrap our minds around this stuff. Where are these creatures coming from? Giants and monsters? Where is this stuff coming from? All right. The Legends of the Jews by Louis Ginsberg, that book I just showed you, is a large collection of stories and folklore according to oral and written traditions, including the Talmud, Mishnah, and the Haggadah. Ginsberg organized the Haggadah in chronological order as a series of volumes. While we cannot rely on the Legends of the Jews as a consistently accurate and reliable source, it does give us the perspective of ancient Jewish thought. So that's all we do. We read and say, okay, that's interesting. That's something to consider. That's all we're doing right now. Okay? Let's read one of the passages. The Legends of the Jews, Volume 1, Chapter 1, The First Day. Tabal, the second earth, is the first mainland, this is quote from that book, is the first mainland inhabited by living creatures, 365 species, all essentially different from those of our own earth. Some have human heads set on the body of a lion, or, that sounds like the Sphinx, don't it? Or serpent, or an ox. Others have human bodies topped by the head of one of these animals. So a human body with a serpent head, or an ox head, or a lion head? That sounds like what we were just seeing with the Egyptian pantheon. Mm-hmm. Okay? And even Enoch 19, where it says, and these devils were sacrificed to as gods. Okay? Besides, Tabel is inhabited by human beings with 2 heads and 4 hands and feet. In fact, with all their organs doubled, excepting only the trunk. It happens sometimes that the parts of these double persons quarrel with each other. So sometimes we think about Greek mythology, you see the 2-headed giant, you know, fighting, and it would be fighting itself. The 2 heads yelling at one another and having 4 arms. It happens sometimes that the parts of these double persons quarrel with each other, especially while eating and drinking, when each claims the best and largest portions for himself. This species of mankind is distinguished for great piety. Another difference between it and the inhabitants of our earth. Let's define that word, piety. Let's define that word so that we know what he's talking about. So they're distinguished for great piety. Yeah, a quality of being religious or reverent. So they're distinguished for great piety. So what is that talking about? They were worshipped. And what did Enoch say? That these devils were worshipped as gods. Okay? Let's go back. I got a little bit here to read. Here we see more descriptions of chimerical creatures, not to mention strange men with 2 heads and twice as many limbs. Interestingly, it places them in Tebel. Tebel is placed below Heled, the surface where humans live. So they're saying Tebel is like the underworld. These creatures dwell in the underworld. Now, quote from the book once more. Our own earth is called Heled, and like the others, it is separated from the Tebel by an abyss, the Tehu, the Bohu, a sea and waters. So there are waters or something that divide from this land, this area.
Jesus is confronted by a man possessed by demons who identify themselves as Legion, for we are many. He casts out the demons, who then possess a nearby herd of swine. Immediately, the entire herd goes crazy and commits mass suicide by stampeding down a hillside and off a cliff into the sea. The seas have always belonged to him. It's his domain. Why did Jesus walk on water? To show his power over the devil. Moses parting the sea, same thing. Book of Revelation, all the dragons and dragons and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Where do they come from? They rise from the sea.
So there's earth where humans dwell. There's an abyss that separates it from this other region. This could be the expanse beyond the ice wall. It could be. We can go real deep with this thing. You know what I'm saying? But I remember, if I'm not mistaken, way back when the footage that talks about when Admiral Byrd went and discovered the region beyond the ice wall. He said him and his team went over there. They said it was a land larger than the United States over there. And he said he saw some terrifying creatures over there too. You know what I'm saying? So we don't even know the half of it. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep going. So according to this passage, in the same chapter, the home of these creatures is below the surface of the earth, separated from us by void and waters deep. It's worth noting that this description of these creatures and where they live is inserted in the middle of an explanation of how God created the heavens and the earth. This work doesn't actually say that God created these creatures, only that he made that level of the earth that is now inhabited by them. So this is probably where they end up being banished to. And who knows, they might it's like when you think about Sasquatch and all these different these different creatures and stuff, the cryptids that I was showing you all throughout North America. Think to yourself, people go searching for them all the time. Why can't they find this 10-foot ape-looking man? Why can't they find him? It could be there's a portal that goes from this realm to that realm where they all abide, perhaps. Who knows?
Could be.
Just like the guy showed in that drawing, how that creature came out that portal. Arm and a leg came out and he showed up in that Miami mall. Who knows? Who knows? Keep going. It's also worth noting that it describes Tebel as the first mainland inhabited by living creatures. This does not mean it was the first to have living creatures chronologically, but rather that it is the first layer in the succession of layers of the earth where living creatures can preside. As we would see it, it is the lowest part of the earth that the living can journey to. All beneath it is for the souls and spiritual beings beyond the veil. 2 chapters later in the same book, we see an echo of some of these creatures with a twist. The Legends of the Jews, Volume 1, Chapter 3. The inhabitants of the 7 earths. This is quote, some of the Canaanites are giants, some of them are dwarfs. They have 2 heads, wherefore they can never arrive at a decision. They are always at loggerheads with themselves. Excuse me. It may happen that they are pious now, only to be inclined to do evil the next moment. So that's kind of interesting that it says some of them are giants and some of them are dwarfs. So we think about the story of these little Martian men and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? It just opens your mind a little bit. Like, okay, this might at least help to give an explanation to some of this stuff that we see in science fiction and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Here we see again the 2-headed creatures as mentioned previously in chapter 1, but this time relating to the descendants of Cain. This passage links the concepts of the creatures of Tebel, the Nephilim giants and dwarfs, all as creatures birthed with and living alongside the Canaanite people. Remember, the Canaanites came after the creation of the world, backing up the previous claim that God did not create the creatures of Tebel. They were destroyed in the flood. This places them in what is known as the antediluvian world, the time before the great flood. If this passage is accurate, then the creatures mentioned would likely have the same or similar origin as the Nephilim giants that they are associated with. That claim would align with books found in the Dead Sea Scrolls that mention 3 races being born and not just giants. What we read in Enoch 7 about the high giants, the Nephilim, and the Eliud. Okay? Let's keep going. I'm just going to read this part. Again, the legends of the Jews is far from biblically accurate, but the passages mentioned do seem to align with the concepts found in the Bible, multiple books in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the ancient writings of surrounding nations and cultures. Regardless of the accuracy of that book specifically, it still tells a tale that parallels many other cultures, both ancient and modern alike. Creatures from below, caves being the gateways to secret worlds of wonder. It's mystical and mysterious, but the concept rings aloud throughout time and haunts us still. Okay? Let's see, what else do I want? Grab this. We're going to go to Leviticus chapter 17, verse 7. We're going to touch on this now.
Leviticus 17:7.
Uh-huh.
The book of Leviticus chapter 17, verse 7. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations.
Okay. You're going to pull this up here. So that's what you just read. Leviticus 17:7. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils. Right? We're going to look into that Hebrew word for devils. When you go to it, unto devils is the Hebrew word seir. Seir. But you know what that word in the modern is actually called? Satyr. That goat man you were talking about.
Oh, okay.
So he's saying in verse 7, they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, unto the satyr, unto the goat man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, we'll go back to that Hebrew word, the biblical usage. Hairy, he-goat, buck, a sacrificial animal. Satyr may reference to a demon-possessed goat with like the swine of Gadara. So it's this goat demon thing. What God is there that people worship that's part man, part goat? Satan, but do you know the proper name?
Lucifer? I think it's Mestima or something?
No. Baphomet.
Oh yeah, Baphomet, that's right.
Half man, half woman, or part man, part woman, part goat god.
Mm-hmm.
A satyr. Because that's what the satyr is. Half man, half goat. So the Israelites were worshiping an ancient form of Baphomet. Okay? So again, it talks about, we just read in the legends of the Jews, giants and monsters being created. These half-breeds, these creatures, these strange creatures that dwelt in a certain location, separate from where humans dwell. Mm-hmm. Okay? From there, we're going to go to Genesis chapter 15 and verse 20.
Genesis what again? Chapter
15 and verse 20.
The book of Genesis chapter 15 verse 20. And the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Rephaim. You said verse 20.
Yeah, just verse 20. So, that word, Hebrew, Rephaim, giants. Old tribe of giants. So, everywhere you go, and this is in Genesis, so this is before the Israelites. This is during the time of Abraham, our great forefather. There were giants in the land. He had to fight them off. Giants. Old tribe of giants. From there, we're going to go to 2 Samuel, chapter 23, verse 20. 2 Samuel, chapter 23, and verse 20.
2 Samuel, chapter 23, verse 20. And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts. He slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. He went down also and slew a lion in the midst of a pit in time of snow.
Okay. So it's interesting. He called these men of Moab
Lion-like men.
lion-like men. We don't really see that sort of language used, right? But now, what did the legends of the Jews say dwelt down there? They said that sometimes it was like an animal, a lion with a human head, like the Sphinx, or he said sometimes in reverse. A human with a lion head. Lion-like men. Now you could say, nah, that just means they were valiant like a lion. Okay, well, we're going to go to 2 Samuel 17. I'm going to read this. 2 Samuel chapter 17, verse 10. And he also that is valiant, whose heart is as the heart of a lion. I mean, he's describing him being like a lion in sense of his spirit. But here, it sounds a little different. He's saying they were lion-like men. Okay? Even if you go to the book of 1 Maccabees, I'm going to go there real quick. 1 Maccabees, chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. And so he gat his people great honor and put on a breastplate as a giant. He wasn't a literal giant, but he did as a giant. Why? Because in Baruch it says that these giants were experts in war. So he put it on as a giant, being as an expert in war. And girt his warlike harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. Verse 4. And his axe, he was like a lion. Okay? Lion-like was like a lion. So here it's describing him having the spirit of a lion. But there, where you just read, it sounds a little bit different. We're going to delve into the Hebrew and see what the Hebrew word is saying for lion-like. Okay? His acts were like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. Okay, so we're going to go into the Hebrew for that. Hold off on that for a minute. So when you go into the Hebrew word for lion-like in that passage, what is that again you're reading? 2 Samuel 23?
Verse 20.
Yeah. So when you go into that Hebrew word, it's Ariel. And outline of a biblical usage, what does it say right there?
Meaning uncertain.
They don't even know what that means. They don't. Possibly lion-like. Possibly 2 sons of Ariel of Moab. So they're not really sure. If you go into, because that word Ariel, Ari and El, those are 2 separate words that make up that word. If you go into those 2 separate words, Ari means lion, or pictures or image of lions. Lions. And then the El means God or godlike, mighty one. So, lion god, lion king, lion warrior. That just seems really interesting. Especially when that original word, they don't know what it really means or where it come from. All you can do is break down that word into 2 similar words. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. The other word. Okay. Now, the 2 on the left side, the skull, I don't know if that's real or not, but I guess it's trying to portray a lion-faced person. It could be fake. Who knows? This right here is probably makeup or something, some prosthetic put on them to make them look like a lion, but that could be what these men resemble. You know what I'm saying? Could be very well what they resembled. And then right here is a statuette. This is the actual artifact of an ancient artifact of like a lion man that ancient peoples created. I think it was found somewhere in Germany or something. But a lion man. Now, where are they getting that from? Where are they getting that from? Now, these lion-like men of Moab are in the same area where those giants used to dwell. And those monsters used to dwell. You know what I'm saying? Just piecing these things together. Just trying to piece it all together. Was there something else that I wanted? Let me see. So this is from the Legends of the Jews, Volume 2, Chapter 1. Zepho, king of Kittim. So we read about this in Yashar 61, where he went in that cave and saw a half man, half animal eating an ox and slew him. All right, so this is another description of that account. He shivered the stone in pieces And entering the cave, he saw an animal formed like a man above and a he-goat below. So it was half man, half goat. So this was a satyr. This was a Baphomet. And he killed the strange beast, which was in the very act of devouring his lost ox. There was great rejoicing among the people of Kittim, for the monster had long been doing havoc among their cattle. And in gratitude, they set aside one day of the year, which they called by Zephal's name in honor of their liberator. And all the people brought him presents and offered sacrifices to him. So he became a great hero because he killed this satyr thing. Okay? Bear with me. I'm just trying to see if I forgot something. Okay. All right, from there, let's go to this. Isaiah. Right here. Now, I want you to go to Isaiah chapter 13 and read verses 2 and 3.
13, 2 and 3.
Yep, Isaiah chapter 13, verses 2 and 3.
The book of Isaiah chapter 13, verse 2. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain. Exalt the voice unto them. Shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness.
Okay. So that is from a particular translation of manuscript. But if you go into Brenton's Septuagint, it's translated a little differently. So Isaiah 13, 2 and 3 reads this. Lift up a standard on the mountain of the plain. Exalt the voice of them. Beckon with the hand. Open the gates, ye rulers. Verse 3. I give command. This is God speaking. I give command and I bring them. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath, rejoicing at the same time and insulting. Now, I'm not saying that this translation is more accurate, but it's interesting that it says mighty ones in the King James, but it says giants from this particular manuscript. Okay? Who knows? And maybe that's the reason why we're seeing so many giant sightings in these last days. Because perhaps he's calling forth for these giants to be a part of his judgment and wrath upon the earth. We don't know. This is something to consider. All right, now I'm going to play a couple of videos. Here. Let's start with this one right here. Okay? All right, so I'm going to read the caption on the side. Fallen angels supposedly found in Siberia, Russia. Found in a Russian mine in the permafrost that was taken out with an excavator. It may be one of the messengers of the apocalypse. We just talked about giants in the last days. It may be one of the messengers of the apocalypse. The sculpture was allegedly excavated by miners at a location 340 kilometers away from the Russian town of Zaya in the Amur Oblast. The Russian workers also supposedly make references to repenting around the angel statue and talk about an energy coming from it. They also allege people with helicopters are on their way at that time to collect the statue. So these miners are working in some hole they dug, and they found this way down in this hole, a supposed statue of what looks to be an angel holding a shield bowed down with his head, with his eyes closed. And they said they're standing near it and they feel energy coming from it. Somebody gonna have to explain this. I wouldn't be standing nowhere near that thing. Okay, let me see if I can find maybe a picture. Nah, I ain't gonna worry about it. If anything, I'll put it in the post production. But yeah, look at that thing. Look at that. That look eerie. It look demonic. And then they say it's a statue, but look at all the detail of the cloth. It looked more like it was frozen in time. But what is that doing deep down in the earth? Remember Tabal from the Legend of the Jews? That land or that region that's separated by an abyss where those creatures dwell? Started to get a little freaky, like, man, well, hold on. There's more than meets the eye, especially when you start to look at all of these different things. Okay? Let's play this video.
Did you see that video of those 10-foot creatures in Brazil that was actually caught on video?
I did see those.
Dude,
Wild.
Look at this, Lil. They're moving, and there's one where it's like walking down the mountain.
It looked really tall.
Yikes.
But then there is one in Mexico as well. Look at that thing.
Oh, it looks similar.
It's huge.
There's a lot of things happening in different places all the way across the world. You can't coordinate that.
Then this one was in Canada. It looks just like the one in California,
Yeah,
right?
that one's weird, dude.
And then a couple of them in Chicago.
Well, those are weird.
And then watch them zoom off.
Golly, dude. Those things are moving fast.
That's demonic.
It's weird, right?
Weird.
You need to check out the one that happened in Mexico. It's
Oh, this
literally
is in
this thing
Mexico?
flying down the road, just like gliding. And it's changing colors.
Ooh, what?
That's like really good footage.
So just something else. So so this is not something that goes back into the ancient days and antediluvian time before the flood. This is stuff that people are seeing today, 2024. Giants and creatures and all these different things are appearing, and they're seeing this. And if there's any truth to that translation of Isaiah 13:2, this could be the Most High God causing these things to come about. Okay, let me show you this. Okay, come on.
Hey, what is that in his hand? I was wondering what that was.
It is a mummified finger.
That's a finger?
A finger.
What in the world?
Yeah. So let me see if I can grab it from here, because it's not going to be able to pull it up. So at the top there, the caption, remains of giant found in Egypt, right? Mm-hmm. So where did the ancient Israelites dwell before they went into Canaan? Egypt, right? What would the Smithsonian accused of doing?
I don't remember.
Stealing giant bones and destroying them.
Yeah.
According to the German newspaper, a researcher named Gregor Spory has presented a number of photos of a mummified giant finger. These incredible images are now being shown to the public for the first time. The finger is 15 inches long, and it is genuine. It belonged to someone who was more than 16 feet tall. 16 feet tall Egyptian. Apparently, the photos were taken during excavation in 1988. So that picture right there of him holding that's from the 80s, and it's just now being revealed. But they have not been published until now. Unfortunately, this finger is not housed in any Egyptian museum. In 1988, Gregor Spory came in contact with an old man from a grave robber dynasty. Spory had to pay $300 to see the mummified finger and take pictures of it. Let's see. And I'll be able to put this in the video, but these are hieroglyphs. You see, if you just kind of scroll over, you see the Egyptian kings depicted as being massive. Now, when you think about other like Egyptian historians, they'll say, oh no, they're just doing that to show their glory and their majesty. But it's interesting that they keep showing themselves way bigger than all the rest of the people, because they could be actual kings. If you look around all that picture, like if you can kind of see there, especially towards the top, in one image it shows a man going into a basin, and then it shows the picture of those basins in real life and how massive they are. So if that basin is that small in the picture, but then it's that real in big life, then this person must have been enormous.
You're on the top left.
Yeah, the top left, or right rather, right here. But all these pictures are pretty interesting. This here is showing him in the basin, and that's the basin in real life. So he had to be enormous.
Yeah.
Or to the other side over here,
That's
it's showing those big, and I think it shows a person in relation to how big these sarcophaguses are. These coffins, these Egyptian coffins. And the poles too. There's another picture. Let me see if I can find that too. Okay, so it's already on there. So, yeah, so it's just some other things to consider. Gonna read these last two things, and we'll be done. Okay. The myth of the Patagonian giants, like other stories about remote exotic places, captured the European imagination for a very long time. The first mention of this mythological race surfaced in the 1520s from the account of Antonio Pigafetta, chronicler of the Ferdinand Magellan expedition. Quote, excuse me. So this is their account. This is what they're going to say. But one day, without anyone expecting it, we saw a giant who was on the shore near today's Puerto San Julian, Argentina, quite naked. So this giant was naked, and who danced, leaped, and sang. And while he sang, he threw sand and dust on his head. Our captain, Magellan, sent one of his men towards him, charging him to leap and sing like the other, in order to reassure him and to show him friendship, which he did. Immediately the man of the ship, dancing, led this giant to a small island where the captain awaited him. And when he was before us, he began to marvel and to be afraid. So the giant was afraid of this man. And he raised one finger upward, believing that we came from heaven. And he was, so maybe like his ancient ancestors, the fallen ones that came in the form of man. Who knows? And he raised one finger upward, believing that he came from heaven. And he was so tall that the tallest of us only came up to his waist. What does that remind us of? Remind me of Robert Wadlow, right? His dad only came up to his waist. That's how tall these giants were in South America. Okay, let's go back. Withal he was very proportioned. The captain named the people of this sort Paphlagoni. The etymology of the word is unclear, but Patagonia came to mean land of the big feet. Magellan seized two of the younger males as hostages to bring back to Spain, but they got sick and died on the journey. So he tried to take these giants back to Spain, but they died. Okay, keep reading some of this. This is a picture depicting them. Look at that. And that's a female giant and a female baby giant. 100 years later, in The World Encompassed, London, 1628, the first detailed account of Sir Francis Drake's circumnavigation, the author, Drake's nephew of the same name, wrote, Magellan was not altogether deceived in naming them giants, for they generally differ from the common sort of men, both in stature, what did it say? Beneath and strength of body, as also in the hideousness of their voice. But yet they are nothing so monstrous or giant-like as they were reported. There being some Englishmen as tall as the highest of any of
that we could see.
Yeah, my eyes are starting to go. But peradventure the Spaniards did not think that ever any Englishman would come thither to reprove them, and thereupon might presume more boldly to lie. The same Penjones, 5 cubit, or about 7 feet, tall and a half, describing the full height, if not somewhat more, of the highest of them. But this is certain, that the Spanish cruelties there used, referring to Magellan's hostage taking, have made them more monstrous in mind and manners than they are in body, and more hospitable to deal with any stranger that shall come afterwards. So they're saying these were gentle giants. Gentle giants. How much more of this? Okay. He reduced the height of the Penjonians from 10 feet to 7.5 feet, but was obviously more intent on discrediting the Spanish and blaming them for the monstrosity of the giants. Ironically, though, he was nearly confirming the basic facts behind the myth. So he's saying, they weren't 10 feet, but they were 7.5 feet. But those original Spanish conquistadors were saying they were 10 feet tall. Read this last part. In the 1700s, the myth was still alive and entertaining Europeans. Horace Walpole, the English historian and Gothic novelist, published an account of the giants lately discovered in a letter to a friend in the country, following the return in 1766 of Captain John Byron, who had circumnavigated the world in the HMS Dolphin. Word leaked that the crew had seen 9-foot giants in South America. Byron's May docking and Walpole's July publication suggests the I can't read it right now, with which rumors passed along the London grapevine. In his 31-page pamphlet, Walpole satirizes the whole idea and fastidiously suggests that a limited number of the giant women could be imported for the sake of mending our breed. Let me jump down and just read this last part. When we came within a little distance from the shore, we saw, as near as I can guess, about 500 people, some on foot, but the greater part on horseback. One of them, who afterwards appeared to be a chief, came towards me. He was of a gigantic stature and seemed to realize the tales of monsters in a human shape. So we talk about the giants and the monsters from the Legend of the Jews. If I may judge of his height by the proportion of his stature to my own, it could not be much less than 7 feet. Mr. Cummings, one of Byron's officers, came up with the tobacco, a gift, and I could not but smile at his astonishment, which I saw expressed in his countenance upon perceiving himself, though 6 feet 2 inches high, become a pygmy among giants. Remember we read, it said we was as grasshoppers in their sights? Mm-hmm. You know, so he's felt like a dwarf, a pygmy in among these giants. For these people may indeed more properly be called giants than tall men, the shortest of whom were at least 4 inches taller. So at the very least, some of them were taller than them. Mm-hmm. At the shortest of them, they were like 6'6", but the tallest of them were many feet tall. What else did I have? One last small thing I want to show, and we will be done for tonight. So there's reports that the moon is rusting. Right? They're seeing red on the moon. Taking these high quality pictures, they're seeing this mineral, and they call this mineral red hematite. Hematite gets its name from the Greek word hamatitis, which means blood red. After the color of the mineral in its powdered form, nearly every human society has used the earthy red ochre variety of hematite as a pigment for paints, glazes, facial and body decorations. So essentially, now when they look at the moon, they see this red tint, and they said that it could very well be this mineral, which is hematite, coming from the Greek word meaning blood. All right. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. And I beheld when he had a... Let's start from the top. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. So the moon became red. And when you look at that word, that Greek word, it's very similar. I know it looks like amia, but it's actually hamia, which is similar to the Greek word here. Ama, or hamatisis, which means blood red. So you're seeing that the moon is turning red according to prophecy. We read Isaiah 13:2, which talked about, at least in that particular manuscript, saying that the giants were being called forth for the wrath of God. You know what I'm saying? So these could all very well be end time prophecies that we're not really thinking about, but that's probably why we're seeing all these things, seeing all these reports of monsters and giants in these last days. Okay? So I know this is a long lesson, but I just wanted to try to wrap it up. Again, the name of the lesson: the devil, his angels, and their sin. Okay? So that's all I got. Again, I'm not trying to say I know everything, but simply that there's a lot to consider when you think about the Old Testament, the Apocrypha, even if we brought out a scripture in the New Testament, and then what other scripture? We brought out Jubilees, Enoch, Yasher, we brought out Josephus, we brought out also, the Legend of the Jews. So there's a lot of different stuff we went over, okay? But yeah, there's just a lot to consider when you think about the angels that fell down, made it with women, and producing these giants and these monsters. And they're still prevalent to today. We're still seeing them, okay? That's all I got. With that, I'll say shalom.